Ladies and gentlemen, what if I told you that the very thing you're worrying about right now is the one thing God is already working out for you? What if the battle you think you're fighting alone is actually the doorway to a miracle far bigger than your fear? Today I want you to hear this with every part of your spirit. The moment you give it to God, the impossible becomes possible. The moment you stop trying to control everything, heaven starts moving on your behalf. You are not stuck. You are not forgotten. You are standing on the edge of a breakthrough, and all it takes is surrender. Let go, and watch what God does next. Surrender is often misunderstood as a form of quitting, but in the spiritual sense, it is the exact opposite. It is a profound internal shift where you allow a higher power to take the lead in areas where your fear, your ego, and your limited understanding have been doing the driving for far too long. When you choose to surrender your worries to God, you are stepping into a very different vibration, one rooted in trust, openness, and alignment rather than anxiety and control. Wayne Dyer often spoke about the illusion of self-sufficiency, the ego's belief that it must handle everything alone, yet every moment of anxiety comes from exactly that illusion, the belief that you must do life by yourself. Surrender is what dissolves that illusion and reconnects you with the source that has guided you since before you were aware of guidance. To surrender is not to throw your hands up in defeat. It is to release the heavy burden that has been weighing on your shoulders. Worry is exhausting because it puts you in a constant state of trying to anticipate threats, solve problems that haven't happened, and manage outcomes you could never possibly control. The mind becomes a battlefield, constantly running scenarios and imagining worst-case outcomes because it doesn't trust that there is a loving intelligence holding you, supporting you, and working things out behind the scenes. When you give your worries to God, you interrupt that cycle of mental struggle. You interrupt the ego's grip. You create a moment of stillness where divine power can reach you, speak to you, and work through you. In Wayne Dyer's teachings, surrender is not passive. It is profoundly active. It is a conscious redirection of your energy from fear to faith, from strain to trust, from the small self to the infinite one. It requires awareness. It requires honesty. It requires the deep humility to recognize that your greatest solutions rarely come from force, but from allowing. When you surrender, you open your life to possibilities far beyond what your fearful mind could construct. You make room for guidance that arrives as intuition, as clarity, as sudden insights, as unexpected opportunities, or as people who show up at just the right time with exactly what you need. These are not coincidences. These are the movements of a universe responding to your release. The moment you surrender, something inside you shifts. Your breathing softens. Your chest loosens. The mind quiets just enough for you to sense that you are being carried, not crushed. You feel supported by something wiser and stronger than your own willpower. That shift is not imaginary. It is the spiritual reality of connection. When you worry, you cut off that connection because worry says it's all up to me. Surrender restores it by saying, I trust where you are taking me. It is a realignment of your thoughts, your energy, your expectations, and your perspective. You begin to understand that life is not happening to you, it is happening through you. And divine power flows most freely through a mind that is still, receptive, and willing to trust. Worry is noise. Surrender is silence. And in that silence, God can do His greatest work. When you let go, you make space for blessings you couldn't see before, space for breakthroughs that require your openness, not your tension, space for answers that come not from fear but from faith. Wayne Dyer loved to remind people that the same force that keeps planets in orbit, that causes flowers to bloom, that turns a seed into a tree, is the force guiding your life. And none of these natural miracles require worry. The tree does not stress itself into growing. The sun does not question whether it will rise. Nature does not force, it allows. When you surrender, you join the rhythm of that nature. You stop pushing. You stop clenching. You stop demanding things unfold in the way your ego insists they must. You shift from a mindset of how will I ever figure this out, to I trust that this is being guided, even if I don't see how yet. God's timing becomes more important than your personal timeline. God's plan becomes more important than your fears, and your faith becomes stronger than your anxiety. You start to see that many of the things you worried about in the past resolved without your panic, without your overthinking, and often in ways that surprised you. That is the evidence of divine orchestration. That is the proof that surrender works. As you practice surrender, you begin to see how unnecessary your old patterns of worrying were. Worry never prevented anything from happening. It only drained you of peace. It never solved a problem. It only distorted your perception. It never added to your life. It only stole from it. Surrender returns everything worry takes. It restores clarity. It restores balance. It restores creativity. It restores hope. But most importantly, it restores your awareness of God's presence in your life. You learn to say, I don't know how this will work out, but I trust that it will. You learn to hand over situations that you cannot fix, relationships you cannot control, outcomes you cannot predict, and burdens you cannot carry alone. And each time you do, you feel lighter, you feel freer, you feel more aligned with the truth that you were never meant to walk through life weighed down by fear. You were meant to live connected, deeply, consciously, and courageously connected to the divine source that created you. Surrender is strength because it reconnects you with real power. Worry isolates you, surrender integrates you. Worry shrinks your vision, surrender expands it. Worry confines you to your limited understanding, surrender opens you to infinite possibility. When you give your worries to God, you stop wrestling with life and start cooperating with it. You stop forcing outcomes and start flowing with divine wisdom. You stop believing that everything depends on you and start trusting that nothing is impossible for God. Worry is a powerful force, but not in the way we often imagine. It doesn't protect you, it doesn't prepare you, and it certainly doesn't make your life smoother. What it truly does is create resistance. Resistance in your mind, your body, your spirit, and even in the flow of life itself. And when Wayne Dyer spoke about the nature of resistance, he was pointing to something deeply spiritual, the idea that everything you fear, avoid, or obsess over creates an energetic barrier between you and the solutions God is preparing for you. Worry is like building a wall in the middle of a river. You interrupt the natural flow of divine guidance. You disrupt the movement of grace. You block the very blessings that are meant for you because your attention has become fixated on what could go wrong instead of what God can make right. Wayne often said, what you think about expands. This isn't just a motivational quote, it's a spiritual law. When you focus on worry, you're feeding your energy into the very outcome you fear. The mind becomes cluttered, overactive, and heavy. You begin to imagine scenarios that don't exist, and those scenarios shape your emotions, your decisions, and your perspective. In this state, it's hard to see opportunities because the mind is too busy scanning for threats. It's hard to feel God's presence because fear makes you feel isolated and alone. It's hard to hear divine guidance because worry is noisy, intrusive, and relentless. Worry turns your attention inward in a way that is distorted. It keeps you obsessing, analyzing, replaying, predicting, and trying to control, and all of that creates resistance. Resistance is not punishment, it's simply the energetic result of misalignment. When your thoughts are rooted in fear, you cannot simultaneously hold the frequency of faith. When your energy is tense, God's guidance cannot easily flow through you. When your mind is full, your spirit becomes quiet. When you worry, you place yourself in opposition to the natural current of divine timing. You begin rowing upstream, exhausting yourself. When life was meant to carry you effortlessly forward, the more you push in fear, the more tired you become, because that is not the direction of your soul. But when you shift your attention to faith, something extraordinary happens. Fear loses its momentum. Doubt loosens its grip. The mind begins to slow down. The heart begins to soften. And you move from a state of resistance into a state of flow. Flow is not a mystical idea. It is the natural state of your spirit. It is the place where your intentions, your energy, and God's plan begin working together instead of against each other. Flow is the space where you stop forcing and start allowing. You stop overthinking and start trusting. You stop clinging to control and start opening yourself to divine movement. Flow is where miracles begin. Flow is where synchronicities appear. Flow is where the right doors open. Conversations happen at the perfect moment, and clarity rises like the sun after a long night. Flow is the spiritual rhythm God created you to live in. Faith creates this flow because faith shifts your attention from fear to possibility. Faith says, I don't need to know how this will work out, but I trust that it will. Faith relaxes the mind and opens the heart. Faith is a vibration that aligns with divine timing. It is the energy that attracts answers, creates breakthroughs, and reveals paths you didn't even know existed. When you choose faith, you release resistance through trust. You stop micromanaging outcomes and begin cooperating with the universe. Wayne Dyer often used the metaphor of an airplane flying through turbulence. Worry is like gripping the seat, sweating, imagining the worst. Faith is remembering that the plane is being flown by someone who knows far more than you do. You are not the pilot of life, you are the passenger being carried by a creator who sees beyond every storm. When you stop trying to take control out of fear, you allow God to navigate you through things you could never navigate alone. Choosing faith doesn't mean ignoring reality, it means refusing to bow to imagined realities that don't exist. It means anchoring yourself in the truth that there is a divine intelligence orchestrating every detail of your life, one that isn't surprised by your challenges and isn't intimidated by your obstacles. When you trust this, your energy opens, your heart becomes receptive, your mind becomes calm enough for divine ideas to reach you. Intuition becomes clearer, inspiration becomes stronger. You start recognizing signs, guidance, and nudges that were always there but hidden beneath your worry. Faith creates flow because flow is God's language. It is the language of ease, alignment, and inner peace. It is the sensation you feel when something simply clicks, when clarity suddenly arrives after days or weeks of confusion, when the right person appears at the right time, when a solution unfolds without strain. Flow is what happens when you stop resisting life and start trusting that life is supporting you. It's not magic, it's alignment. And this alignment affects everything. It affects your health, as your body relaxes and your nervous system resets. It affects your relationships, as you become more present, more open, and more loving. It affects your work, as creative ideas flow more naturally when the mind is free from fear. It affects your spiritual life, as you begin to feel guided, connected, and deeply supported. Flow is not something you chase, it is something you return to when you stop letting worry dominate your inner world. When you trust God, you rediscover your natural rhythm. You stop trying to outrun life or fight against it. You begin to understand that everything has a season, and every season has purpose. You no longer interpret delays as denials. You no longer see obstacles as threats. You begin to see them as divine redirections, each one moving you towards something greater. Faith is a choice, and it is a daily choice. Every thought is an opportunity to shift from resistance to flow. Every moment of worry is an invitation to surrender. Every fear is a chance to lean deeper into trust. And each time you choose faith, even in the smallest way, you create a little more flow. You open a little more space for God to move. You reconnect with the truth that your life is guided, protected, and unfolding exactly as it should. Where worry builds walls, faith opens doors. Where worry constricts, faith expands. Where worry darkens, faith illuminates. And where worry creates resistance, faith welcomes the flow of the divine.